Members of the Colditz Society, can we get one thing straight? Around here, I'm not Lord Campbell. I'm usually known as Black Campbell. And I would like, at the outset, to follow David Ray on what he was saying to you about the proposed new relationship between the society and the association. Of course, the society, which is an open international institution, which membership about 100, due to increase, which includes some of our children, grandchildren. And the association is a closed international society, which inevitably is not due to increase. And therefore, the exercise which David Ray has just referred is, I think, of prime importance. So, will you, in these circumstances, before telling the tale which I am supposed to do, allow me to express the gratitude of the association to the society for their interest in our affairs and in us, for their gracious hospitality, without which those few of us able to attend, as indeed today, would not be able to do so. And for your guardianship of the embers of our erstwhile spirit of resistance. Because apart from the fact that we have not met since the birthday celebrations on horse guards for our royal patron, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, the problem of our survival has taken a turn for the worse since our deprivation by her demise. And after that, we abrogated our rules, our constitution, leaving the whole administration to the discretion of the officers, which in effect meant Kenneth Lockwood, who was awarded, honoured with an MBE for those services. So that this expression of gratitude I wish to be made before I had to tell this tale. Now the tale has never been known and has never been told for over 58 years, and not without very good reason. On the 16th of April, 1945, the Germans had to open the gates to the Americans, who walked into the camp, who left the gate open, and unbeknown to anyone, it appears, I walked out. This has since led to some complications. The journey was in an open-sided jeep to the United States base, armed with a fairly heavy automatic, against pockets of resistance under US command. And that is how I started make my own way home. Not unnaturally, in years to come, some explanation had to be given, which was never considered very satisfactory. But we all knew that the Germans were, the Americans were advancing. We heard the rumble back. Victor Campbell, as you may know, went up and put a homemade Union Jack on the roof of the castle. And this was seen by the American heavy artillery, who were training their guns on the base of the camp, where the German panzer had lagered after a skirmish. And so they laid off, and they came in to investigate. Well, no surprise you to know that Colditz was not marked as a POW camp on their gunnery maps or on any American campaign map. So that was our first luck. And when they came to investigate, and they came into the gate, there was a melee around there. And I sort of potted down, found Outman Booker, and I said to him with great glee, "The war for you," he said. "And I'll have your Browning automatic and that clip." He handed over. So I took that in my tunic and was standing there, and I saw a thin, tall American soldier. So I grinned at him, and he waved at me, and he walked towards me and said, "Do you want to come with me?" So I said, "Yes." But he said, "For God's sake, hurry, we're in the middle of a battle." So we shoved off. And that's how it started. Well, when we got to the Jeep, he said, "Can you use," fished out this automatic, "can you use this?" I said, "Yes, I think so." And he said, "Right, I'm going to drive like Jehu. You're going to lie flat on the floorboards with this thing. And you're to deal with pockets of resistance. And far low to blind them. Never far high, low, 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 and then slightly up. And I'll be driving away." Well, and he said, "That is a command, and you are now under my command." I said, "Fair enough." So off we went. There was a bit of trouble on the way, a lot of dust. I don't know what happened. We were going so fast. I don't know whether I killed anybody or didn't kill anybody. But it was no great importance. And we pulled up short of the base. So I said to him, "Well, thanks for the ride." And, "Oh," he said, "not at all." And I said to him, "Oh, what's your name?" He said, "MacDonald." "And what's yours?" I said, "Campbell." God's sake. Anyway, come into the mess. So I was brought into the mess. And I was given a T-bone steak. Well, on a somewhat exiguous fare, which was having at Colditz. I was very hungry, so I ate it. But it didn't do me much good. And then he said, "And here's some water, and here's my friend Jake." One thing and another, started drinking. Well, the next thing I remember was the next morning waking up on a juddering tin floor of a Dakota. And with some people that I'd never seen in my life before. So I opened an eye and I said, "What's going on?" And somebody said, "Oh, we're prisoners of war, we're going home." And I said, "Oh, are we?" And shut my eye and went to sleep again. It was the grandmother and grandfather of all hangovers I've ever had in my life. Well, the next time I woke up, and remember, was walking in with these people into a very large country house. I don't know where it was, but I've been since told it could have been Dorney Wood. Can you hear, by the way?
Yep, fine.
There's not much option doing it. There were no questions asked. We were just sort of pushed in. We were taken to a large bathroom and told to take our clothes off. We all did, piled them up. And then we were put in baths and scrubbed with Lysol all over by the most muscular women that I've ever seen. Well, then dried off, given pajamas. I had pajamas for years. Pajamas, bone soup, which was very good, and told to shove off to a dormitory, which was on the first floor. Obviously it wasn't a dormitory originally, but now it had beds in it. And take our clothes with us. Well, I took my clothes with me and looked around, and I found a cupboard that hadn't got a lock, so I put them in there. And I waited till about 2 o'clock, until everybody was snoring or making noises like it. Got hold of my clothes, put them on, opened the sash window, and outside was a drain pipe. And next to it, a wonderful old ivy, thicker than my wrist. So I was down there and away. Got onto the road. It was a long drive. I got onto the road, held up a car. In those days, the headlights had little slits. We didn't have proper headlights. We stood in the middle of the road, fortunately stopped, and said, what's all this about? So I said, can I have a lift to London, please? Well, he said, why, what are you doing? What's happened to you? Well, I said, I just overstayed my leave. I've got to get to London. So that went down all right. He said, well, take you halfway. Then I found another lift to take me to London, where my father had a little flat in Branston Court, near Marble Arch. So I potted in, and a bit of luck again. Baines, who was one of the porters, was on night duty. He was an old soldier. He remembered me, and he had a key. He let me into the flat. He said, have you got any money? I said, well, I had a few of my escaping German marks, but they weren't much use. So he said, well, I'll lend you a fiver, and I'll ring up your father. So I said, well, what's happened to him? Well, he said, didn't you know, when you were taken prisoner, he joined up, turned to the regiment, and took your place with your rank. And he got promotion since. And I've got his number. So leave it to me, I'll call him up. So I went to bed. He has woken up a very puzzled father the next morning. Curious conversation. Hello, what on earth are you doing here? So I said, well, I've come home. He said, yes, I know, but how did you get there? And I said, for heaven's sake, I can't explain it. So he came up, and thank God, brought up my old Lancashire, which was in good condition, and said, well, is there anything you need? So, well, having lost 2¼ stone from my rowing weight, all the clothes fell off. So I said, well, I need some clothes. Have you paid your tailor's bill? I said, no. He said, well, I'll take you to my tailor and we'll see what we can do. So we shoved off to Father Graham Taylor in Savile Row, and I was given some. There was a suit. Somebody had died or not turned up. And the tailor said, this would fit him, I think. And it did. It was a wonderful suit. So that was a start. And my father said, ordered me 2 more. That was there. Said he'd pay for them, which he actually did. And then I went off to the Reform Club, of all places, and given luncheon, and given £100 by my father, who then headed off. And I went the next day back to my chambers in the temple. I'm getting on for time.
Wonderful, keep going.
Yeah, where are we up to now?
20 past.
20 past, 20 minutes?
Keep going, 20 minutes.
Well, that's about the ration, isn't it? Cutting a long story short,
Don't cut it too short.
one day, the clock, Arthur, poked his head round the door, and my old pupil master, who later became a field court judge, had taken me in to sit in his room so that I could sort of get to work again. And Arthur put his head round the door, and they said, sir, there are 2 gentlemen to see Mr. Campbell, but haven't made an appointment. So my pupil master said, well, show them in, Arthur. And in walked 2 red caps. Military policemen, who said, you are Second Lieutenant Campbell, A.R. Campbell, R.A.? I said, yes. And are you POW 223? I said, I was, but not now. They said, we're arresting you for desertion. So I went. And it was a very awkward affair. They took me to a room at Paddington Station. There was a horrible little man with an ill-fitting cap who simply couldn't have worn it in a decent regiment. Horrible. Never seen a shop found. And he said, he was, I couldn't bear it. He said, you're being arrested on charge of desertion. And I said, well, yes, I gather that. What's it all about? He said, you didn't report as a range officer in Wales. I said, well, I'm a ranger. I don't know. Well, he said, I'm ordering you now. It's a firm order. Report tomorrow morning as a range officer in some unpronounceable place in Wales. And I said, I won't do it. I said, the war's not over. I'll go and do a job, I'll go and fight, I'll go work in action, but I won't go to Wales. I'm volunteer. I'm not a conscript, I'm volunteer. So there it was. I turned up at this court-martial, and 5 of them, and about a month later. And they said, "How do you plead?" I said, "I'm guilty." "Are you going to be represented? It's a serious charge." I said, "No." They said, "Why not?" I said, "I can't think of any reasonable defense." So they then said, "Well, it's like this. We have a letter from General," I shan't mention his name, so-and-so. "You went to war with him as his assistant adjutant. And he has written a letter commending you for some of the jobs you did in action, trying to stave off the German panzer advance to Beaches." And he asked for leniency. And they knew about my father, the returned regiment. And since then, I've discovered that it's from an odd document that turned up in your file, Kenneth, the secret report by Mickey Wynne. They must have had it, because that, for some reason or other, commended some of the work I'd done at Colditz. They then said, I didn't know about it. Is there anything else to say? I said, "No, sir." So they shoved off, came back. After about an hour, I was sitting outside having a smoke with the red caps who were guarding me. And one said to me, "It's all right, sir. They won't convict you." I said, "I don't know about that." Well, they came back and they said, "We dismiss the charge of desertion, but the order of the court is that you be discharged the service on grounds of temporary mental instability, which will carry a pension." So I said, "Sir, I don't want a pension. And there's no evidence of temporary mental instability." He said, "Will you be quiet?" That is the order of the court. We don't need any evidence, and if you don't want your pension, you've no need to take it. And so that really is the end of the story. And I think really, with gratitude to my guardian angel, who after 86 years, pretty heavy toil, is now due for a holiday.
That was an extraordinary story, eloquently told, and probably not known by many people at all.
Oh, it's not.
It is from everywhere else. Thank you so much for that. I thought I might just add to your story from an extract from Padre Platt's book from the 1st of April 1942. "The last of the stacked snow, dirt encrusted and ugly, was flushed away this morning with pick, shovel and water hydrant. While it was going on, Black Campbell availed himself of one of the hydrant keys, a T-shaped bar, and dashed up the Anglo-Dutch staircase, hotly pursued by Dixon Hawke. The key was safely concealed, but Black was taken to the commandantur, and on the way, at the bottom of the staircase, he slipped his wallet to Romilly, but not unobserved. Dixon Hawke made a grab at it, whereupon Romilly threw it towards a group of officers. It opened in mid-air, and the contents scattered far and wide. Some of the papers were retrieved by officers who at once disappeared, and some were caught by representatives of the Wehrmacht. After examination at the commandantur, Black was brought to the cells under armed guard. Later in the day, he was visited in his cell, and the 2 counts on which he was to be charged were read to him. They were 1, assaulting a German Obergefreit while in the course of his duty, and 2, taking an iron key, which was part of the camp fire fighting equipment, thus endangering the lives of people living in the camp and sabotaging the slosh itself. Both charges, he was assured, were punishable by death, the second of the 2 having a minimum statutory punishment of 1 year's imprisonment. Black pleaded guilty to having taken the key, but denied all the implications involved. At this point, Preem gave an undertaking that if the key was returned, the matter would be dealt with summarily by the camp commandant rather than by court-martial. Black, who in civilian life as a barrister, decided to accept the undertaking and was released pending sentence. Do you remember that?
I do.
Well, there it is, what it's worth anyway. Black Campbell would be delighted to take any questions from the floor. Now we have a mobile mic. It's not our newsletter editor, by the way. But somebody's got it somewhere. Peter's got it. Peter with issues, and so if anybody's got any questions, fire away. Great.
So, may I ask you, could you give us some thoughts on your time when I believe you represented some of your fellow colleagues at various court-martials, i.e. your dealings with the general authorities when you used your legal experience?
Yes, it's difficult to deal with shortly because they're all recorded in my black book, which is in the library of this museum. Some of the people concerned are dead. They've never been published, those documents. It was really a sort of poor man's lawyer for the camp. And with the help of a German lawyer called Naumann, who was helpful. And in order to do this, all my work was at the Oberkriegsgerichtshof at Leipzig. And it was a little difficult on occasions because on one occasion the witnesses escaped on the station. So we weren't really greatly encouraged this, but I think what's going to be fair about it, that court was a very good court. They were very fine lawyers, and they were fair. And they overturned 2 verdicts of treason, which involved death. One for about 18 Czech pilots in our Air Force, and another for an American whose name I keep forgetting, right at the end of the war. Schaefer, that's right. They overturned that. So that it was in a pretty terrifying situation where they really didn't want to honor the Geneva Convention at all. Only by pressure from the Americans when they were, before they went in, our protective power, and pressure from the Swiss and after, did they even get anywhere near it. And all these books saying what wonderful chaps they were, a lot of nonsense. I mean, I know that's not the right thing to say these days, but it happens to be true. But I think that's about all I can do.
David.
In order to do this defence work, you obviously had to speak pretty good German. I mean, did you actually learn the German while you were at Colditz, or was that during education subsequent before the war, for instance? You must have needed to spoken deeply, pretty good German.
Yes. Really rather odd. I got terribly bored in my public schools. And I decided at the age of about 17, of course I couldn't go to Cambridge until I was 18. I scraped through enough, something or other, I forget what it was now, credits or something, to qualify to go to Cambridge. So I took a year off, and the first 6 months at the École des Sciences Politiques, and the last 6 months at Heidelberg University, studying philosophy. And I've still got the old notes, but I could speak German, and I could read it. But the awful thing is, I put a block in when I was at Colditz. I made all the German officers speak to me in English. Of course, I couldn't understand German. And once you got the block in place, it's never really come out. I mean, if you were to speak to me in German now, I could understand everything you were saying, but I couldn't reply. Isn't it strange? So I did know. I could read. The block hadn't quite worked.
Could I ask you a question about why exactly you were called Black in Colditz?
Yes, because there was, in those days, if you can believe it, I had masses of black hair, sort of rather ape-like down there. And Campbell Preston had red hair. And so Campbell Preston was a bit of a mouthful. So he was called Red Campbell, and I was called Black Campbell.
Could you tell us how you arrived at Colditz?
How did you get to Colditz? Why were you sent there in the first place?
Oh, some sort of escaping activity.
Which camp did you arrive from? Remember?
Oh yes, Titmoning. I had a little sort.
And did you arrive with others?
No. No, I went on my own.
It's interesting that Giles Romilly and John Hampton Bailey both escaped from that castle as well. Romilly successfully, of course, in the sense that he reached the Allied lines. They're asking me to press you on this one, I'm afraid.
Which one?
The question about your escape. Would you give us a couple of minutes on it, do you think, your escape from Tipperley? Is that possible?
Yes.
Thank you.
It's absolutely bad. I decided to go over the bar in broad daylight between two machine gun posts. And I had to arrange for the soldiers in each of those posts to be distracted. So I got Martin Gilliard to look after one. Of course, he could charm anybody. And I think he charmed what he did, that post. And the one on the right, Charlie Holt was in charge of. And I watched this, all seemed well. They were chattering away. And so I shinned up the wire, and I got stuck on the top as you go over, you see, while got things like trousers and sort of skirts. They get caught. So I had to cut myself off. I thought it might happen. I haven't. and climbed down the other side. And shoved off. And got caught.
Roger.
Where and when were you initially captured?
We seem to be going back in time here, but when and where were you actually captured?
Initially?
On the St. Paul Road, moving inwards from the beaches with a field gun battery, trying to hold the German panzer advance to the beaches, and a rather hazardous exercise. I don't know if you know that in those days there are 3 bags you put in your breech if you're firing a field gun. But if you wanted to go right through a tank, and not right through, go in, blow the whole thing up, you put in 1 bag. And so we were using 1 bag firing at tanks. And eventually, of course, one was taken prisoners. I'm afraid we lost rather a lot of men.
Is it correct that you were involved in the aftermath of the Franz Joseph escape when Mike Sinclair was shot and wounded? And in the sense that possibly drawing up charges against a German and what have you?
Well, I can't exactly remember what happened. I know that it was a low point, a great low point. We all took the view that Mike had been murdered on the wire. I have really no sufficient accurate recollection as to what I did. I might well have drawn up something, but I don't remember it. It was a very distressing moment. Hunter, I remember, got involved and was charged by some offence by all the Burns murderers. But I haven't got that.
Kenneth?
I should like to say that as one who profited by the defence of Black, I would say that my sentence was reduced to 6 weeks solitary confinement, and I'm sure that without his help would have been a lot more than that. I just say that just as what I feel was very profitable defence by Black of us here at Dublin.
I'm terribly sorry. I've got to ask you to put it again because I'm pretty deaf now.
Kenneth Lee was just making the point that he believed that your defence of him substantially reduces sentence to, I think he said 6 weeks, when it probably should have been far more. So he's very grateful for what you did for him and all the other prisoners that you defended.
Oh, yes, dear Campbell, yes, and thank you for your penknife that I still have.
Kenneth, could we ask what you were actually tried for?
Well, it's without notice. I just am a bit hazy as to what the case was, but no, I couldn't put it straight now. I just couldn't do it. I'm afraid people who would like to hear will be disappointed, but I can, of course, talk to Black afterwards if he's interested. I'm sure he would.
I can help you over there. If anybody wants to know what happened with any of these It's all in my black book. You'll find it. What you were charged with, what your offence was, and what I thought about you.
Right, I just wondered if we'd ever see this wonderful document published.
Well, I published nothing except a small book of verse, to do with Colditz. I sort of rather took the view that some of us took, that it was really a sort of disgrace to be taken prisoner at all. But I rather sort of thought, well, there you go then.
Do you know if there was an equivalent Black Campbell for the Poles and the Dutch and the French?
No, there was only one, I think.
Yes. But I just wonder if they had any advocates or people who represented them at all.
Oh. I can't remember. I don't. In the Black Book, I don't think there are Czech fighter pilots. I don't think there are any French or Dutch. And I don't think, thinking back, that the French and the Dutch or the Poles under Lord Komorowski and then the previous term, I don't think they were ever charged with an offence which they wanted to challenge in the Kriegs Obergerichtshof, because what I was dealing with was at that level, and so I don't think this happened, as far as I know.
Brian and then William. Brian.
Right, I'd like to ask you, were you part of the group of prisoners who left Colditz and then were sent back? You went to Spangenberg and then were sent back.
Yes.
If you were, what were you sent back to Colditz for?
Well, it's a small matter of an escape. Jimmy Yule, he's now dead, an awful nice man. And he's a sigma, and very much involved with the wireless setup at Colditz, first rate man. And I was sent to Spangenberg. I didn't really quite know why. And I thought that it was because the Germans wanted to bump me off. And I had it in a dream. So I went to the senior British officer and said, I want to swear an affidavit. Oh, this is on only occasion I'll give my parole not to escape the course of the dream. So that was done. I got Spangenberg. And when I got out of the train, they left the door open. They left everything open. I went, looked at the end of the train. There was a long, flat truck with two heavy machine guns mounted either way on it. So I wasn't far off. But anyway, when I got there, there was Jimmy Yule. And we decided to crawl out over there's a sort of drain pipe that ran under the drawbridge. And it was a dark night. We chose a good night. And on the way, we'd got halfway across when Jimmy moved a stone and it clattered down. And of course, the guard was on top of us, walking up and down, so he heard the clamour. I said Jimmy moved the stair, and he said that I moved the stair. Didn't really matter. And then all had called out the guards, they all rushed into the moat. Jimmy and I were still up there, hanging on to the pipe. And they brought all the dogs in. And so I said to Jimmy, look, then they started firing. And they emptied, quite a few rounds, didn't hit us. So I said to Jimmy, look, this is not fun. The thing to do is to drop the dog into the, down into the moat. And he said, dog, don't be damned, look at the dogs. I said, well, look, we've no option. So we dropped straight down into the moat. The dogs came, and of course the firing had stopped there. Dogs came. Curious enough, they didn't savage us. We stayed very, I said, stay still, don't move. And so that wasn't a very successful escape. And I think that they decided to back us off to Colditz again.
The original group that went from Colditz to Spangenberg seems a bit of a sort of mixed bag, in the sense that some of those prisoners had never caused the Germans any problems in Colditz. One or two, like Guy German and yourself, had. Can you think of any reason why that this collection of 11 went?
I don't remember a collection of them. I remember going on my own. But memory, I certainly didn't go to the collection.
I thought it was one person.
But I couldn't swear to it, I mean, all this time.
Yes.
But I don't think that I was even sent with Jimmy O. I think we met up there. No, because I think they wanted to bump me off. It was, and it was genuine, I'd say. They knew I was an escaper, but they didn't think that I'd keep my parole. But that's all I can remember.
Any more questions?
Just
sorry,
one.
William.
I just wondered, in the intervening years, have you ever returned? Have you ever been back?
Have I done
Ever gone back to the place?
Gone back to Colditz? Sorry?
Oh, heavens! Light.
David? Yeah.
You spoke earlier of Dr. Neumann, is it?
Yes.
How was it decided whether he or you defended the prisoners?
Well, I, strangely enough, didn't have a right of audience in the Kriegserberische. And he had. So I prepared the cases and the legal argument. And he turned out and trotted it out. And, but, as you probably know, all the continental jurisprudence works on written submissions. So the crux of an appeal is the written submission, and not what you say in court. So that's how it works.
Did he actually come into Colditz to interview prisoners there, or did you do all of that?
No, we corresponded. I mean, under the Geneva Convention, the Swiss insisted that I should have the right to do what I was doing. And if they hadn't insisted, I wouldn't have been able to do it, another example, what it means to have protected power. And in that way, the documents between Now and myself, of course, quite improperly, they were all read by the Campbell authorities, but they couldn't destroy the essence of an argument. And as I say, it was a good court. Say no.
Well, last night I was reading Pat Reed, who in 1953 said it would be of interest to many, and to legal circles in particular, to hear one day the story of his, Black's, long, arduous battle of wits against the German High Command. Well, I think probably for the first time for many, many years, we've heard more than a smattering of that, and a tremendous insight into a different world of Colditz, really, than the usual sort of run-of-the-mill escapes and so on. And I found that utterly fascinating. So would you join with me again in thanking him for coming and speaking to us? I hope you accept this from the Society. It's, I can't even pronounce the name, I'm afraid, but I'm sure you know it well. And I hope you enjoy it in the next few weeks and months.
Oh, that's great. Thank you very much indeed. That's much grander than the ball when I was given him the American best.